When you think of Alcatraz, what comes to mind? A horrifying prison surrounded by ice-cold waters of San Francisco Bay, housing the most notorious criminals and serving as the final destination for many who did the worst of the worst. This island was truly considered as the most secure prison in the entire United States. Its high walls and strong currents were believed to be enough to keep anyone trapped forever. Well, not quite. In June of 1962, something happened that shook the nation. 3 inmates, Frank Morris and brothers Clarence and John Anglin, managed to pull off the most daring escape in American history. These men vanished without a trace, leaving behind only life-size dummy heads on their pillows. And to this very day, no one really knows if they lived or died. This is the true story of the Alcatraz escape that has left the FBI baffled for over half a century. So what exactly made Alcatraz such a scary place? Built in 1859 and initially serving as a military fort, Alcatraz Island quickly became known as the Rock. By the early 20th century, the U.S. government saw potential in this isolated island and decided to turn it into a prison, and let me tell you, there was no shortage of candidates. America had produced some truly notorious criminals, people whose names struck fear into the hearts of many. Men like Al Capone, a mob boss during the Prohibition era, and one of the richest criminals of all time, Machine Gun Kelly, a notorious gangster with a taste for luxury and violence, and those were just the beginning. The notorious B-13 gang of murderers, kidnappers, and armed robbers also spent some time at Alcatraz. You see, Alcatraz wasn't just any prison. It was considered the ultimate punishment, the last resort for housing the most dangerous criminals that the U.S. justice system could not contain elsewhere. But how did the prison operate? What made it so special? First off, the location played a major role. The island was situated in the middle of San Francisco Bay, far from mainland, and surrounded by freezing cold waters with swift currents and a healthy population of great white sharks. Even before the prison was built, drowning in those waters was considered a fate worse than death itself. Second, the design of the prison was meant to both confine and control. Cells were small, stark, and soundproof. Prisoners were subject to strict routines and harsh discipline with almost no privileges. And perhaps the biggest factor contributing to its reputation was the isolation from the outside world. Prisoners were cut off from any meaningful contact with family and friends, which often drove them to mental breakdowns. The combination of these factors made Alcatraz a place where many prisoners lost their sanity and were broken forever. Yet for Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, it only sparked a determination to leave. Frank Morris was a brilliant man with an IQ in the top 2% of the population. He used his intellect and charisma to manipulate others, which landed him in trouble with the law more than once. Maurice was serving a 10-year sentence for bank robbery when he arrived at Alcatraz in 1960. Clarence and John Anglin were different, but equally determined. They grew up in Florida where they learned the skills of working with their hands, becoming excellent craftsmen. They used their talents to rob banks, which ultimately led to their capture and sentencing to Alcatraz. Despite their differences, Morris and the Anglin brothers formed an unlikely friendship and hatched a plan to escape the confines of Alcatraz. Now you might be thinking, why did these men feel the need to escape? After all, they were already in prison. For Morris, it was a matter of pride. He never admitted to being broken by Alcatraz, and escaping was his way of proving it. For the Anglin brothers, it was a way out of a hopeless situation. They felt that Alcatraz was a hell on earth, and they wanted to try anything to get out. Whatever their reasons, they were about to attempt the seemingly impossible. How did they pull off the escape? Their plan involved 2 crucial elements: breaching the physical barriers of the prison and fooling the guards into thinking they were still there. Let's start with the walls. Morris and the Anglins knew that the standard prison bars would be no match for them, so they turned their attention to the less obvious, the connecting walls of their cells. Using makeshift tools like spoons stolen from the cafeteria, they chipped away at the concrete bit by bit. To make things harder, they were in solitary confinement, only allowed out for an hour each day for music, so they had to hide the noise of their drilling from the guards. They managed this by building a homemade drill powered by a vacuum cleaner motor, and when they were finished, behind the wall was a utility corridor leading to the prison roof. But they weren't done yet. They knew the guards would check their cells before and after their hour of recreation, so they needed to create diversions to throw them off track. Enter the dummy heads. Morris and the Anglins created 3 incredibly lifelike heads out of plaster, soap, and real human hair collected from the prison barber shop. They dressed the heads in their own hair and clothing, placing them in their beds. Then they carefully arranged their cells to look as if they were sleeping. To further convince the guards, they even used a record player to simulate breathing sounds. With everything set, the men slipped through the hole in the walls and made their way to the prison roof. There, they had crafted another ingenious device: a raft and life vests made from over 50 stolen raincoats. The escape was flawless. On the night of June 11, 1962, Maurice and the Anglin brothers carried their gear and climbed down the rocky cliffs of Alcatraz. They then pushed their raft into the dark, cold waters of San Francisco Bay and vanished into the night. By morning, guards discovered the empty cells and the life-size dummy heads lying on the pillows. The prison was thrown into chaos. Search parties were organized, boats patrolled the bay, and planes flew overhead looking for any sign of the escapees. But the men seemed to have evaporated into thin air. Now, you might be wondering, why didn't they get caught? How did they manage to stay hidden? The answer lies in the details of their planning. Remember those life-sized heads? Well, they were so realistic that the guards didn't find them suspicious until well after the escape. In fact, the dummy heads remained in the cells for weeks, fooling the staff. As for the actual escape, the men had timed it perfectly. They chose a night with heavy fog, which helped them stay hidden from both land and air searches. Plus, their route took them away from the heavily patrolled areas of the bay, giving them a better chance of making it out alive. But whether they actually reached the shore is a mystery that has endured for decades. The official story is that the men drowned. Their bodies, however, were never found. Instead, the FBI believes that they were swept away by the strong currents and never made it out of the bay. But this theory has its doubts. Many people believe that the men did reach the shore and disappeared into the night. Some even claim that they received letters from the Anglin brothers years after the escape, with one allegedly spotted in Brazil in 1975. To add fuel to the conspiracy, photos surfaced in later years, supposedly showing the brothers alive and well in South America. The FBI investigated these leads, but none of them were ever confirmed. Officially, the case remains open, but unresolved. So what do you think happened to Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers? Did they successfully escape from Alcatraz? Or did the treacherous waters claim their lives? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And while you ponder that, let's move on to our next segment. The aftermath of the escape had significant consequences for the prison and the men who ran it. You see, the escape exposed some serious flaws in Alcatraz's security measures. The fact that Maurice and the Anglin brothers managed to not only escape, but fool the guards for days afterwards, was a major embarrassment for the prison and the FBI. This led to investigations and changes in staff, new security measures, and a re-evaluation of the prison's operations. Some staff members were even blamed for negligence and misconduct. It was a major setback for the prison's reputation as being escape-proof. For the rest of its existence, Alcatraz remained shrouded in mystery and controversy. The question of whether Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers lived or died continued to captivate the public imagination. Conspiracy theories abounded, and speculation ran wild. Hollywood took notice, and the escape inspired numerous films and documentaries over the years. Despite its notoriety, Alcatraz was eventually shut down as a prison in 1963, citing the high cost of operation and maintenance. The island was transferred to the National Park Service in 1972, and today, it stands as a famous landmark and a popular tourist destination. Visitors from around the world come to explore the island and learn about its fascinating history. One of the biggest draws is the audio tour narrated by former inmates, which provides a first-hand account of life inside the prison. People stand where the infamous inmates stood, trying to imagine the harsh realities of life within the cold, dark cells. The escape story adds another layer of intrigue to the island's history, and while we may never know the full truth of what happened to Morris and the Anglin brothers, their legend lives on in the stories told on the windswept cliffs of Alcatraz. If you enjoyed this video, I invite you to watch another video I did on the mysterious disappearance of Maura Murray. Thanks for watching.